So good day. Um, and in this topic, we will cover the Philippine Red Cross, its movement and history. So the Philippine Red Cross was born officially in the year 1947, but with the roots that traces back to the revolutionary days. The Philippine Red Cross has truly become the premier humanitarian organization in the country, committed to provide quality life-saving services that protect the life and dignity, especially of indigent Filipinos in vulnerable situations. So the Philippine Red Cross is not just about responding to disasters, it also promotes health, provide blood services, trains first aiders, and works for community resilience, making it a pillar of humanitarian work in the Philippines. So let's dive into the history of Philippine Red Cross. On February 17, in the year 1899, through the initiative of Apolinario Mabini, the Malolos Republic approved the Constitution of the National Association of the Red Cross. So we should know that the Malolos Republic was the first constitutional republic in Asia, which was established after the Philippines declared independence from Spain in the year 1898. So this was during the Filipinos' struggle for independence that Apolinario Mabini pushed for the Red Cross to show the world that the Philippines was capable of humanitarian action, not only war. And the first appointed president of the association was Mrs. Hilaria del Rosario de Aguinaldo. Next, on August 29, 1900s, Felipe Agoncillo, the international delegate of diplomacy, met with Gustave Moynier, an original member of the Committee of Five and International Committee of the Red Cross President, for the recognition of the Filipino Red Cross Society and application of the 1864 Geneva Convention during the Filipino-American War. So, ICRC, or the International Committee of the Red Cross, is a founding humanitarian institution of the Red Cross movement. So when Felipe Agoncillo met with Gustave Moynier, it was the Philippines' attempt to gain recognition for its own Red Cross. So this was an important event because without the ICRC's recognition, the Filipino Red Cross could not operate under international law during the Filipino-American War. And on August 30, 1905, the Philippine branch of the American National Red Cross, or ANRC, was organized by Filipino and American leaders at the Ayuntamiento. So this was a turning point as Filipino and American leaders worked together. So this gave the country access to international humanitarian support, but since the Philippines was under the United States rule, the Red Cross here this time was still tied to American control. So the next one is on December 4, 1917, when the Philippine branch was officially recognized as a chapter of the ANRC. So this meant that the organization could now operate more formally. So this recognition gave it more resources, training, and legitimacy. It also strengthened its connection to the Global Red Cross Network, preparing the way for a future independent Philippine Red Cross. And on the year of 1934, wherein President Manuel L. Quezon took the initiative to establish an independent Philippine Red Cross. So, President Manuel L. Quezon, he wanted to create an independent Philippine Red Cross. However, since the Philippines was still a Commonwealth under the US rule, it couldn't sign the Geneva Conventions. So the Geneva Conventions are a set of international treaties with main purpose is to set rules during war, especially to protect wounded soldiers, prisoners of war, and civilians. So that's why Quezon's dream of an independent Red Cross had to wait until the Philippines gained full independence. And on the year 1942, during World War II, the Japanese used the Red Cross mainly for their military interests like internment camps, and the humanitarian aid during this time was strictly controlled by military. And on the year 1945, so this was after the war that the Philippine Red Cross was reestablished with the help from the American Red Cross. So this was the time of rebuilding as the country tried to recover from the devastation or the effects of the World War II. So next, on December 1, 1946, 36 Red Cross chapters were initially set up in the country. So the creation of these 36 Red Cross chapters expanded its reach to local communities. And the first Filipino Red Cross manager was Dr. J. Horacio Yanzon. And on February 14, 1947, President Manuel A. Rojas has finally signed the Treaty of Geneva and the Prisoners of War Convention. So during this time, uh, it officially made the Philippines part of the International Red Cross movement. So this marked the birth of the independent Philippine Red Cross as we know it today. And on the following month, March 22, in the same year, that President Rojas signed the Philippine Red Cross Charter or the Republic Act 95. And um, on March 29 in the same year again, the first Philippine Red Cross chairman, Mrs. Aurora Aragon Quezon, she received a cable from Geneva indicating that the ICRC approved to recognize the Philippine Red Cross. So next is on April 15, 1947. So a humanitarian organization that serves as an arm of helping during disasters and emergencies was established. So the Philippine Red Cross was inaugurated in colorful ceremonies at the Malacanang Palace. So, uh, ito na papasok yung role ng Red Cross na mag-promote ng health, provide blood services, mag-train ng first aiders, and mag-work for community resilience. And on September 17, in the same year again, that the PRC was admitted as a bona fide member of the League of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies, which are now known as the Federation.
So on July 31, 1981, the PNRC celebrated the blessing and inauguration of its new headquarters. So this was a significant step for the organization as it gave the PNRC a permanent and centralized home. So the building at Bonifacio Drive in Manila became the nerve center of the entire operation. When we say nerve center, it is the central point of control. So it serves as a command hub where leaders and staff could coordinate disaster relief efforts, administer the organization's daily functions, and respond to emergencies from a central location. So having a main office in the port area of Manila was important for logistics and resource deployment, ensuring the PNRC could quickly mobilize its personnel and supplies to any part of the country. Next. So the year 1992 was a busy one for the PNRC. Around this time, PNRC had already made its mark not only in blood services but also in disaster responses. So this was likely in response to the increasing frequency and intensity of natural calamities in the Philippines, most notably the 1991 eruption of Mount Pinatubo. So in June 12, 1991, the PNRC chapters in Tarlac and Zambales had their hands full, and evacuation centers eventually became overcrowded. That makeshift shelters had to be set up. So to help ease the plight of the evacuees, then Olongapo City Mayor Richard Gordon came to offer assistance in San Marcelino Zambales. He mobilized a fleet of trucks and jeepneys that transported a large number of evacuees from San Marcelino to Olongapo City. So the year 1995, the PNRC Training Center in Tagaytay, which was founded by the Danish Red Cross, was inaugurated. So the inauguration of this training center um, is, was an important development for the PNRC's long-term capacity. So the establishment of a dedicated facility with international support from the Danish Red Cross allowed the organization to systematically train its staff and volunteers in various aspects of disaster management, first aid, and other humanitarian services. So this move shifted the focus from merely reacting to disasters to proactive preparedness and skill development. Next. So the year 1996, the new vision mission of the PNRC was set towards becoming the premier humanitarian organization in the Philippines and Southeast Asia. So this entry signifies a change in the PNRC's direction. So by updating its vision and mission, the organization set ambitious goals for itself, aiming for a leadership role not just within the country but across the region. So this new vision propelled the PNRC to enhance its services, expand its reach, and adopt more modern and efficient practices to compete with or collaborate with other regional and international humanitarian bodies. So on April 15, 1997, the PRC celebrated its 50th anniversary. So this is a significant historical milestone marking half a century since the PNRC's founding. So on September 2, 2003, the new PNRC hotline, hashtag 527-0000, was established to immediately respond to emergencies. So this number streamlined the process for the public to report emergencies and for the PNRC to receive and respond to calls for help. So the hotline made the organization more accessible and efficient in its emergency response. So in the year 2004, January 15, Richard Gordon was elected by his peers as chairman of the PNRC. So this event marked the beginning of a transformative era for the organization as a well-known public figure with a proven track record in disaster management from his time as a mayor. February 26, 2004, after hearing of the Super Ferry tragedy, our peers 14 and 15, PNRC Chairman Richard Gordon sent staff and volunteers who provided first aid and transported the injured to various hospitals. The PNRC also set up a welfare desk to help trace missing persons and provided psychological support to 515 survivors. On December 22 to 31, 2004, Chairman Gordon led rescue and relief efforts in Aurora and Quezon Province for Typhoon Ruby, spending Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve with the victims of the tragedy. So in the year 2006, February 4, Chairman Gordon was first on the ground to instill order in the chaotic rescue effort and recovery of bodies at the Ultra Stampede during the Wawawi anniversary show. So the Ultra Stampede was a tragic crowd crash that occurred on February 4, 2006 at the Phil Sports Stadium, formerly known as Ultra, in Pasig City. So the stampede happened as tens of thousands of people, many of whom had camped out for days, tried to get into the stadium for the first anniversary celebration of the popular TV show Wawawi. So the event promised large prizes, attracting an estimated 30,000 hopeful attendees. So as the organizers began to hand out a limited number of tickets, the massive crowd surged forward. The sheer pressure of the people and the slope driveway leading to the gate caused a fatal crash. The chaotic scene led to the death of 73 people and injured hundreds more. The incident highlighted issues with crowd control and public safety in the Philippines and became one of the country's worst peacetime tragedies. On October 7, 2006, the PNRC was the first to initiate relief and rehabilitation efforts for the 8,000 families affected by Typhoon Milenio in the southern Tagalog and Bicol regions, especially in Sorsogon, which received scant attention as the media focused on billboard incidents in Metro Manila. Next is the Project 143 or I Love You Red Cross. So it was established to saturate the country with volunteers who will be trained to know what to do in times of disasters. Said volunteers, the backbone of the PNRC, would act as the eyes and ears of the organization in times of disaster. So Project 143 is a key initiative of the Philippine Red Cross that uses a play on words from text message I love you to symbolize its community commitment. Its main goal is to create a network of trained volunteers in every barangay or community to act as a PRC's local representatives. So under the program, each community forms a 40 team of 44 volunteers led by one person with 43 members. So these teams are trained to perform 5 functions: predicting local hazards, planning for disasters, preparing the community, reporting real-time information to the PRC, and responding immediately with first aid and other assistance. So this approach makes communities more resilient and self-sufficient by empowering them to be the first responders during a disaster. So in the year 2007, the PNRC Operations Center or the OPSCEN launched its powered text messaging system in a nationwide texting system for easier, dependable, purposeful emergency alert messages to and from local chapters and other key personnel and volunteers. So the system was designed to improve communication between the main operations center or the OPSEN and local Red Cross chapters, as well as key personnel and volunteers across the country. So by utilizing text messages, which are often more dependable than traditional phone calls during disasters due to network congestion, the PNRC ensured that critical information such as warnings, requests for assistance, and updates on relief efforts could be sent and received quickly and efficiently.
So in February 2008, the PNRC officially turned over newly constructed facilities such as barangay halls, health centers, and public schools to the municipality of St. Bernard, Southern Leyte. The project was established in coordination with the Japanese Red Cross Society. So basically, in 2008, the Philippine National Red Cross worked together with the Japanese Red Cross Society to help the community in St. Bernard, Southern Leyte. And this was after the landslide that happened there in 2006. So they built new barangay halls, health centers, and schools, and then officially turned them over to the people. And the idea was to give the community proper places again, like halls for meeting, health centers for medical needs, and schools so the kids could go back to studying. So the next one is 2009. So the consolidation of the Senate Bill 3285 and House Bill 6509 was signed by President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo and is known as Republic Act 10072 or the Philippine Red Cross Act of 2009. And the said act is basically an affirmation of the country's conformity with the Geneva Conventions of 1949 and their additional protocols of the statutes of the International Red Cross and Red Crescent Movement, as well as a confirmation of Philippine Red Cross stand as a revolutionary, independent, and autonomous non-governmental society auxiliary to the authorities of the Republic of the Philippines in the humanitarian field. So during this year, the Philippine Red Cross got stronger legal recognition when President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo signed the Republic Act 10072, or also called as the Philippine Red Cross Act of 2009. So this law came from the combining of Senate Bill 3285 and the House Bill 6509. And what it did was to affirm that the Philippines follows the Geneva Conventions, which are basically an international agreement that protects people during war, like civilians, the wounded, and prisoners of war. And at the same time, it also confirmed that the Philippine Red Cross is an independent and voluntary organization, and it also works alongside the government during emergencies and humanitarian needs, but it still remains as an autonomous organization, not directly controlled by the Philippine government. So the next one is the 2010. So Republic Act 10072 or the Philippine Red Cross Act of 2009, authored by Senator and PNRC Chairman Gordon, was signed into law by then President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo, officially changing the name of the organization from PNRC to Philippine Red Cross or PRC. So in 2010, the Republic Act was fully put into effect. So this law is authored by Senator Richard Gordon, who was also the chairman of the Red Cross at that time, officially changing the name of the organization from Philippine National Red Cross or PNRC to just Philippine Red Cross or PRC. And it really made the organization's identity more clear and more aligned with the international Red Cross movement. So moving on to the next. So for 2011, the nationwide Red Cross Million Volunteer Run was held in celebration of the UN Declaration of the year 2011 as International Year of Volunteers and December 5 as International Day of Volunteers. So this was their way of highlighting the importance of volunteerism and encouraging more people to get involved in different or various humanitarian work. And the event also connected with global celebrations that recognize the role of humanitarian volunteers in shaping the communities. So moving on to the next. For 2013, the PRC leadership called for an emergency meeting with movement partners to discuss actions to be taken to address the needs of the vulnerable population affected by the Typhoon Yolanda or Haiyan. So the PRC or Philippine Red Cross mobilized its staff and volunteers to dispatch cadaver bags to assist the government in the retrieval and management of the dead. And a refrigerated van was also deployed to store bodies waiting for proper identification. So this just shows how heavy the work of Red Cross organization can be. And it wasn't only about giving relief goods or medical care, but the volunteers also had to help with the most hard part, and which was handling the bodies of those who didn't survive. So they provided cadaver bags and even deployed refrigerated bags, so the victims could be treated with dignity while waiting for the proper identification of each of them. So for the next year, 2014, to solve access problems encountered in delivering relief to affected areas of Typhoon Yolanda, PRC and delegates from partner national societies and the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies agreed to purchase a 195-foot military prototype vessel that can dock even on the shallowest water. So the said vessel would be used to aid the movement in its humanitarian efforts in the Philippines and also in the Asia Pacific. So this ship became a changer for the Red Cross. During Yolanda, a lot of areas were almost impossible to reach because of destroyed ports and also the shallow coastal waters. So with this vessel, through this vessel, the Red Cross made sure that next time the relief goods and medical help could get to even the most remote communities much faster. And what's even better is that it wasn't just meant for the Philippines, but it was also meant for to strengthen the humanitarian work across the Asia Pacific. So for the next one, on August 5, 2015. So the PRC, or the Philippine Red Cross, Chairman Gordon led the inauguration of the Philippine Red Cross Tower, and the PRC's new building stands as a symbol of the PRC's growth through the years and a mark of its strong commitment to humanitarian service. So inside, they built a 24/7 operation center that keeps eyes and ears on emergency across all their chapters, coordinating a lot of volunteers and different resources in real time. And right there, they have established the country's biggest blood center, which is open every hour of the day and storing thousands of blood units in high tech facilities with advanced testing machines and equipment. So for March 24, 2017, um, 7766 shelters have already been built for the victims of Typhoon Haiyan. 514 classrooms and 85 facilities have also been rehabilitated and reconstructed. And on May 9, 2017, on its 70th anniversary, so their 70th anniversary was during 2017. So the PRC welcomes the country's first ever humanitarian ship called the MV PRC Amazing Grace. So the MV Amazing Grace was the first of its kind in the Philippines. So it was built to carry relief goods, transport volunteers, and even serve as an emergency medical facility when disasters strike in places that are hard to reach by land. So with this vessel, the Red Cross could extend its reach across our islands, making sure that help arrives where it's needed most, whether that's food or medicine or even rescue operations. So for the next is in June 6, 2017, the Philippine Red Cross, through the effort of its staff and volunteers, has incessantly stepped up its humanitarian efforts for the affected people since the conflict started in Marawi. But more than that, it also marked how the Red Cross has continued to grow, improving its services, expanding its reach, and also strengthening its capacity to respond to any crisis. From then and until today, the Philippine Red Cross carries forward the mission and staying true to its guiding words, being the ones who are always first, always ready, and always there. So that would be all for the history of the Philippine Red Cross, and thank you guys for tuning in.
RA 7719, or the National Blood Service Act of 1994. So this law was enacted on May 5, 1994 in the Philippines. So it is a law or an act promoting voluntary blood donation, providing for an adequate supply of safe blood, regulating blood banks, and providing penalties for violation. So this act have 15 sections. So let's start with section 1 of the Republic Act of 7719. So in section 1, this provides the official title of the law and sets the tone for its overall purpose. So, simple lang ang section 1. It consists of the title of the Republic Act of 7719. So, the title is National Blood Services Act of 1994. Now, let's proceed to section 2, the Declaration of Policy. In order to promote public health, it is hereby declared that the policy of the state. A. To promote and encourage voluntary blood donation by the citizenry and to instill public consciousness of the principle that blood donation is a humanitarian act. Now, to lay down the legal principle that the provision of blood for transfusion is a professional medical service and not a sale of commodity. So under this section, it states na we are not allowed to sell blood. Okay. C. To provide for adequate, safe, affordable, and equitable distribution of supply of blood and blood products. D. To inform the public of the need for voluntary blood donation to curb the hazards caused by the commercial sale of blood. Okay. So balikan natin itong B, no? To lay down the legal principle that the provision of blood for transfusion is a professional medical service and not a sale of commodity. So this means, or this provision, that blood is not a product to be bought or sold for profit, but rather a life-saving resource. No? The law discourages any form of blood trade or selling, as this can compromise safety and ethical standards. So for example, if a hospital charges a patient for blood, the fee should only cover processing, testing, and storage costs. So the blood itself ay hindi na dapat bayaran. So the only thing na dapat mong bayaran is the processing, testing, and storage cost. Now, let's proceed. So, other declaration of policy is E. To teach the benefits and rationale of voluntary blood donation in the existing health subjects of the formal education system in all public and private schools. So F. To mobilize all sectors of community to participate in mechanisms for voluntary and non-profit collection of blood. G. To mandate the Department of Health to establish and organize a national blood transfusion service network in order to rationalize and improve the provision of adequate and safe supply of blood. H. To provide for adequate assistance to institutions promoting voluntary blood donation and providing non-profit blood services either through a system of reimbursement for costs from patients who can afford to pay or donations from governmental and non-governmental entities. I is to require all blood collection units and blood bank centers to operate on a non-profit basis. So no, non-profit po dapat. To establish scientific and professional standards for the operation of blood collection units and blood bank centers in the Philippines. To regulate and ensure the safety of all activities related to the collection, storage, and banking of blood. And lastly, to require upgrading of blood bank centers to include preventive services and education to control spread of blood transfusion transmissible diseases. Now let's proceed to section 3. So under section 3, we have the definition, no? For purposes of this act, the following terms shall mean. Okay, so blood or blood product, no, refers to human blood processed or unprocessed and includes blood components, its products and derivatives. No, so this means that not only whole blood, no, but also parts such as the plasma, RBC, WBC, and platelets, no, as well as the products derived from them like clotting factors or immunoglobulins. No, it is also covered under that definition. Okay. So cutting blood or blood products, these are used in various treatments such as managing blood loss during surgery or treating anemia or supporting patients with blood disorders like hemophilia. Now let's proceed to the blood bank or blood bank center. No. A blood bank or blood center is a specialized laboratory or medical institution equipped to handle all aspects of blood donation and transfusion services. Its safety, I know its responsibility include recruiting and screening blood donors to ensure the safety of the donated blood as well as collecting, processing, testing, storing, and transporting blood and its components. No? So let's proceed to the definition of commercial blood bank. No? Commercial blood bank is a type of blood bank that operates for profit. Meaning, no, its primary purpose is to earn income, makakwarta from the collection, processing, and distribution of blood and blood products. Unlike non-profit or government-based blood centers that promote voluntary donation, commercial blood banks may involve monetary transactions such as selling blood to hospitals or patients. This practice, or ang commercial blood bank, is discouraged under RA 7719 because it goes against the law of making blood donation a voluntary and humanitarian act and not as a business. Okay, so the definition of blood collection unit is a facility or institution authorized by the Department of Health specifically to recruit, screen, and collect blood from voluntary donors. Its main focus is on the initial stages lang of the blood donation processes, such as ensuring donor eligibility and collecting safe blood for further use. O kaning blood collection unit is responsible sila for screening only. So we have a standard requirement para makadonate ka o blood. So the blood collection unit is responsible for that stage of blood donation. Now next is the hospital-based blood bank. Okay, on the other hand, the hospital-based blood bank is located within a hospital and is not only capable of collecting and storing blood but also of performing compatibility testing such as cross-matching to ensure that the blood is safe and appropriate for transfusion to a specific patient. Okay, so the differences. Now, the key difference of blood collection unit and hospital-based blood bank is in their function and setup. So, kaning blood collection unit, they operate independently and focus only on donor-related services. While ang kaning hospital-based blood bank, so integrated siya within the hospital system and involved in direct patient care and transfusion services. Na tayo sa A voluntary blood donor, okay, the one who donates blood on one's own initiative and without monetary compensation. Here's a blood transfusion, transmissible diseases. Okay, these are the diseases that may be transmitted as a result of blood transfusion. Example of blood transfusion transmissible diseases is the AIDS, hepatitis B, malaria, and syphilis. So the department na nag-govern aning nga law is the Department of Health. Secretary of Health naman, or any other person to whom the Secretary delegates the responsibility of carrying out the provision of this Act. And lastly, the walking blood donor is an individual included in the list of qualified voluntary blood donors. So kani sila ang kaning walking blood donor is ang kanang person nga eligible siya nga magpakuha og dugo or mag-donate og dugo. So let's proceed now to section 4. In order to ensure adequate supply of human blood, voluntary blood donation shall be promoted through the following. First is the public education. So public education campaigns are conducted to raise awareness about the importance and safety of donating blood, encouraging citizens to donate out of civic responsibility. Okay, second, promotion in schools. So, promotion in schools help instill the value of blood donation among students from an early age, building a culture of volunteerism. Okay, third is the professional education. This ensures that healthcare workers and medical professionals are well informed and trained to support, promote, and carry out safe blood collection and transfusion practices. Next, establishment of blood service network. Now, this creates a coordinated system among blood banks, hospital, and collection units to ensure efficient blood distribution and availability. Okay? The walking blood donors who are ready and available to donate blood when urgently needed, provide a reliable backup stores, especially in emergencies or during shortage. Kaning walking blood donors, run sila og reserve. Na if ever magkaroon ng shortage of blood, kaning volunteers, available na sila nakuhaan og dugo. Okay, now for section 5. Under section 5 is National Voluntary Blood Service Program, or the NVBSP. The Department of Health, or this department, in partnership with the PNRC, PBCC, and other government agencies and NGOs, shall implement the NVBSP to ensure nationwide blood supply. Funding shall come from the department budget, so merong budget ang department, with initial contributions of at least 25 million each from PCSO and PAGCOR, 20 million from Duty Free Philippines, and support from civic organizations. Okay. So section 6, or the upgrading of services and facilities. So blood centers shall offer education and counseling on transfusion transmissible diseases. Now, all government hospitals must establish voluntary blood donation programs. Dili lang government hospitals, but as well as the private hospitals are encouraged to do the same. So the department, in consultation with PSHBT and PSP, shall set guidelines for the proper use of blood and blood products. For section 7, the phase out of commercial blood bank. So as we discussed earlier, so commercial blood bank is the kind of blood center that uses blood for profit. No? So in this section, all commercial blood banks operating in the country or in the Philippines shall be gradually phased out within 2 years from the date this act takes effect. So since this act was enacted in 1994, so supposedly by 1996, dapat wala na commercial blood bank sa Pilipinas. This means they must cease all commercial operations related to the sale or profit-based distribution of blood and blood products. Within that period, within 2 years, dapat wala na commercial blood bank in the Philippines. No? The goal is to transition to a fully voluntary non-profit blood donation and distribution system in the public health and ethical standards. Masunod na siya. So during the phase-out period, commercial blood banks are expected to coordinate with the Department of Health to ensure compliance and to begin converting to non-commercial or voluntary service models. So for Section 8, for the non-profit operation, so all blood bank centers shall operate on a non-profit basis, provided that they may collect service fees not greater than the maximum prescribed by the department, which shall be limited to the necessary expenses entailed in collecting and processing of blood. Blood shall be collected from healthy voluntary donors only.
Of the Republic Act No. 7719, Section 8 is a non-profit operation. All blood banks shall operate on a non-profit basis, provided that they may collect service fees not greater than the maximum prescribed by the department, which shall be limited to the necessary expenses entailed in collecting and processing of blood. Blood shall be collected from healthy voluntary donors only. So dapat lahat ng blood banks shall operate on a non-profit basis. So dapat dili siya buhatong business. There is payment, but dapat hindi siya maglagpas sa ni-require ng Department of Health na payment or fees. And lahat ng bayad is for the equipments used or bayad yun sa processing of blood. Next is Section 9, which is the regulation of blood services. It shall be unlawful for any person to establish and operate a blood bank unless it is registered and issued a license to operate by the department, provided that in case of emergencies, blood collection and transfusion under the responsibility of the attending physician shall be allowed in hospitals without such license under certain conditions prescribed by the department. So not anyone is allowed to operate a blood bank unless they are registered and have the license to operate. But in case of emergencies, allowed ang physician on duty na mag-collect and transfuse ng blood even though that hospital is not licensed. But dapat in accordance or mag-follow pa rin sila sa condition ng department. Again, in case of emergencies, allowed ang physician on duty to collect and transfuse blood even though that hospital is not licensed, but dapat nag-follow sila sa condition ng DOH. Such blood bank shall be under the management of a licensed and qualified physician duly authorized by the department. So dapat lahat ng blood bank is under siya sa operation ng physician na may license. Section 10, importation of blood bank equipment, blood bags, and reagents. So, upon the effectivity of this act, equipment, blood banks, and reagents used for the screening and testing of donors, collection and processing and storage of blood shall be imported tax and duty-free by the PNRC or the Philippine National Red Cross. This provision shall be implemented by the rules and regulations to be promulgated by the department in consultation and coordination with the Department of Finance. So all equipments used for blood collection and transfusion and even all equipments for the processing is dapat tax-free and VAT-free. So the Department of Health and the Department of Finance is in coordination for this section of this act. So next is section 11, which is the rules and regulations. The implementation of the provisions of this act shall be in accordance with the rules and regulations to be promulgated by the Secretary within 60 days from the approval thereof. The existing revised rules and regulations governing the collection, processing, and provision of human blood and the establishment and operation of blood banks shall remain in force unless amended or revised by the Secretary. The rules and regulations shall prescribe from time to time the maximum ceiling fees for the provision of blood, including its collection, processing, and storage, professional services, and a reasonable allowance for spoilage. So within 60 days from the approval, dapat na-implement na ng Secretary ang rules and regulations of this Act. So next is the Section 12, which is the penalties. So upon complaint of any person and after due notice and hearing, any blood bank which shall collect charges and fees greater than the maximum prescribed by the department shall have its license suspended or revoked by the Secretary. So, if may person na may magreklamo na ang blood bank is nagbabayad for more than the maximum fee required by the Department of Health, that said blood bank is may possibility na ma-revoke or masuspend ang ilahang license. Any person who is responsible shall suffer the penalty of imprisonment of not less than 1 month nor more than 6 months, or a fine of not less than 5,000 pesos nor more than 50,000 pesos, or both, at the discretion of the competent court. And any person who shall establish and operate a blood bank without securing any license to operate from the department, or who fails to comply with the standards prescribed by the department referred to in section 9. So if there is a person na magpatayo ng blood bank or mag-operate ng blood bank without securing a license for the department, or hindi siya nag-comply sa standards of the Department of Health in accordance with the section 9, is shall suffer the penalty of imprisonment of not less than 12 years and 1 day nor more than 20 years, or a fine of not less than 50,000 pesos nor more than 500,000 pesos, or both, at the discretion of the competent court. The Secretary, after due notice and hearing, may impose administrative sanctions such as but not limited to fines, suspensions, or revocation of license to operate a blood bank, and to recommend the suspension or revocation of the license to practice the profession when applicable. The head of the blood bank and necessary trained personnel under the head's direct supervision found responsible for dispensing, transfusing, and failing to dispose within 48 hours blood which have been proven contaminated with blood transfusion transmissible diseases shall be imprisoned for 10 years. This is without prejudice to the filing of criminal charges under the revised penal code. So next is the section 13, which is the separability clause. If any provisions of this act is declared invalid, the other provisions hereof not affected thereby shall remain in force and effect. Section 14, repealing clause. This act shall supersede or take the place of the Republic Act No. 1517 entitled Blood Bank Act, the provisions of any law, executive order, presidential decree, or other issuances inconsistent with this act are hereby repealed or modified accordingly. Section 15, which is the last section of the Republic Act 7719, is the effectivity clause. This act shall take effect after 15 days following its publication in the official gazette or in 2 national newspapers of general circulation. So this is approved or signed by Jose C. De Vicencia, Jr., Speaker of the House of the Representatives. This act, which is a consolidation of the Senate Bill number 1011 and House Bill 879, was finally passed by the Senate and the House of Representatives on April 28, 1994. Approved on May 5, 1994 and signed by Camilo L. Sabio, Secretary General House of Representatives, and signed also by Fidel V. Ramos, former President of the Philippines. So, That is all for Republic Act number 7719, or the National Blood Service Act of 1994. Thank you.
So, good evening, everyone. Today we are going to tackle or we are going to discuss about the removal of commercial blood banks. But before that, let us now know kung ano nga ba ang commercial blood banks. Ano nga ba ang commercial blood banks? Commercial blood banks is a privately owned facility that collects, stores, and sells human blood and blood products, primarily for profit. Unlike nonprofit or government-regulated blood centers, commercial blood banks often rely on paid donors. Nag-rely sila on paid donors, not for the volunteer one, which can compromise both the ethical standards and safety of the blood supply. So, my difference between the commercial blood banks and the non-profit or the government blood banks. The commercial blood banks kay nag-ooperate sila sa business collecting and selling blood or its components mainly for profit, unlike sa non-profit or sa government blood banks na nag-aim sila to provide a safe and adequate blood supply as a public service without profit motive. Usually or basically doon lang sila sa mga nagvo-volunteer na mga tao to donate blood. So next slide is the purpose of removal. Ano nga ba ang purpose? Bakit ni-remove ang commercial blood bank? So the removal of commercial blood banks was mandated under Republic Act 7719, National Blood Services Act of 1994. So the law requires a gradual phase out of all commercial blood banks within 2 years after its effectivity, extendable for another 2 years if needed. So binigyan sila ng 2 taon para tanggalin ang commercial blood banks, then nagdagdag sila ng another 2 years or nag-extend sila ng another 2 years. So may kabuuan na 4 years para matanggal ang commercial blood banks. So the primary purpose is to, number one, ensure public health and safety by preventing unsafe blood collection and distribution. And number two, promote voluntary, non-remunerated blood donation system free from commercial influence. So nag-promote sila ng mga tao na willing or involuntary ang pag-donate ng kanilang blood. So number three is protect vulnerable population from exploitation by discouraging paid donor or blood donations. So number four is standardize the blood banking system under government regulation and nonprofit institution. So for the next slide is justification for the removal. Nganong gi-remove? Can you please justify nganong gi-remove? So the removal of commercial blood banks is a vital reform to ensure the blood donation remains safe, ethical, and accessible to all by shifting away from profit-driven practices toward voluntary, non-remunerated donation. The Philippines can strengthen public health protection, align with international standards, and promote fairness in the healthcare system. So may maraming mga reasons or mga valid reasons bakit tinanggal ang commercial blood banks. At yan ay madidiscuss natin on how we are going to justify kung bakit nga ba tinanggal ang commercial blood banks.
So first is ethical concerns. Commercial blood banks profit from the sale of human blood, which can encourage exploitation of poor individuals who donate for money despite possible health risks. So di nato ni siya maiwasan na sitwasyon no kung ang tao nga need jud niya og money, mimo jud niya tanan para makakuha siya og money or makuha to niya nga money despite nga naa na siya gibati or naa siya mga sakit nga dili lang niya ginaingon. So pwede siya makaapekto sa product sa blood or sa iyahang sarili kay what if di ay high blood day siya atong nagpakuha siya dugo. Kay in contrast to voluntary donation, mas makonsider siya nga ethical as it is based on altruism, not financial necessity. Second is safety and quality issues. Paid donors in commercial system may hide health conditions to qualify, in, increasing risk of transfusion transmissible infection such as HIV, hepatitis B, and hepatitis C. So, in government and non-profit blood banks manggod, we follow a standard procedures, no, such as bawal kamukaon og mga fatty foods, and dapat sakto jud imong tulog kay makaapekto na siya sa hemoglobin, labi na sa babae, no. Napud tay mga interviews dia and mga forms para ma-determine jud nga adequate or qualified ka para mag-donate og dugo. Number 3, public health protection. The removal of profit-driven practices strengthens confidence in the national blood supply system. A unified non-commercial blood service promotes fairness and equal access to safe blood for all patients. So, ang example ani, if a blood product from a paid donor carries a virus, it could lead to outbreaks and compromise patient safety. Next is number 4, international standards. The World Health Organization recommends that all countries adopt a system based on voluntary, non-remunerated blood donation. Removing commercial blood banks aligns the Philippines with global best practices.
And number 5, sustainable alternative for commercial blood banks. So the law provides option for existing commercial blood banks to convert into clinical laboratories, ensuring job security for employees and allowing businesses to reuse their investments in equipment and training. So mauna ang justification on removal the commercial blood banks. So for conclusion, the removal of commercial blood banks is necessary to uphold ethical standards, protect public health, and ensure the safety of the national blood supply. By transitioning to a voluntary, non-commercial system, the Philippines foster a culture of altruism, strengthens its healthcare services, and aligns with international guidelines on safe blood transfusion practices. So that concludes our report for today. Ingana ka importante and ingana mo na ang importance kung anong gi-remove nila ang commercial blood banks.
So, good day. Today we're going to tackle about the Administrative Order number 9 series of 1995, Order Rules and Regulations implementing the RA 7719. So this administrative order is pursuant to Section 11 of RA 7719, passed by the Senate and the House of the Representatives at April 28, 1994, and took effect at May 12, 1994. The following rules and regulations are hereby adopted by this administrative order, which we have the title The Rules and Regulations Implementing the RA 7719, or also known as the National Blood Service Act of 1994. We have the purpose that needs or prescribe the principles, guidelines, and procedures and standards for implementation of the RA 7719 to facilitate compliance therewith and achieve the objectives. These rules are applied to all hospitals, entities, establishments, or institutions, government or private, engaged in blood transfusion services in the Philippines, whether it's full-time, part-time, local, or foreign. So we have the definition of terms that need to be understood and to be able to fully understand this administrative order. So we have the Act, Department, Secretary of Health, Blood and Blood Products, Blood Transfusion Services, Blood Bank Center, laboratory institution with capability to recruit, screen blood donors, collect and process, store, transport, and issue blood for transfusion, hospital-based blood bank center, non-hospital-based bank center, commercial blood bank, which exists for profits. Next is blood collection units, which is an institution or facility authorized by the Department of Health to recruit and screen donors and collect blood. Blood stations are government or private hospitals or Philippine National Red Cross chapter which has not been licensed by the blood center but authorized by the department to store and issue blood and blood products, and also to perform compatibility testing when necessary according to the regulations in the section 40. Blood service facility, any units, office, institutions that provide any blood transfusion services. A voluntary blood donor, on the other hand, is an individual who donates blood on one's own volitions, and it's voluntary, no? So, on accord of an individual. The no-king blood donor is pre-screened individuals who are ready for blood donations. Then blood transfusion transmissible diseases such as HIVs and etc. that can be transmitted through blood transfusion. Blood banking equipments, which are equipment that are essential for laboratory machines, instruments, and their accessories. Include the use of specific supportive processes such as sterilization and sterile disposal of blood and blood products. We also have the blood bank, sterile, sturdy plastic bags which containing anticoagulants, reagents, substance employed to detect or measure another substance or convert one substance to another by means of a reaction. Then, in blood bank, these reagents are necessary to measure hemoglobins, create for blood transmissible diseases such as HIV, hepatitis, malaria, and among the others. So, for Section 5, we have the National Program Committee. For National Voluntary Blood Service Program Committee, created and shared by the Secretary of Health, composed of different organizations, which is listed in the screen. Next is its function. So its function is responsible for formulating a 5-year directing strategy plan, operationalize and institutionalize the National Voluntary Blood Service Program, including the budgetary allocation for program activities, for organizations of Blood National Congress, National Blood Congress rather, and generation of multi-sectoral and interdisciplinary support of national activities, focus on blood service, including organizations. So the regional health directors serve as field representatives to coordinate NVSP activities at the regional levels. The National Voluntary Blood Service Unit, on the other hand, is an institutionalized under Office of Health Facility Standards and Regulations. Then the program funding, we have the budget for or the funds for National Voluntary Blood Services Program that shall be provided by the DOH budget allocations, Philippine Charity Sweepstakes Office for 25 million pesos, PAGCOR 25 million pesos, Duty Free Shop Trust Account 25 million pesos, and contribution from civic and charitable organizations. Fund management is based on the approved NVBSP committee plan, annual DOH budgets for personnel, infrastructures, and operations, trust fund established at national and facility levels, and use of funds aligned with operational plans of subcommittees and facilities. Section 9, Public Information and Education. So its composition, the National Advocacy and Promotion Subcommittee includes the DOH, PNRC, PVCC, Philippine Information Agencies, and other advocacy related to these organizations. So that has a function to prepare a 5-year advocacy plan aligned with NVBSP strategic goals, design non-monetary incentives. Plan coordinates, monitor, and evaluate national advocacy efforts. Public Information and Education, the Subcommittee on Curriculum Development, chaired by the Secretary of Education, includes other representatives from the DOH and the other functions to develop and distribute instructional materials on voluntary blood donations, train teachers on material use, monitor effectiveness and revise as needed, and submit annual budget requirements for NVBSP unit. So, training programs and technical assistance, the DOH provide training and technical supports for communities, schools, industries, barangays, militaries, LGU, so that they can implement their own voluntary blood donation programs. So, professional education, rational use of blood and blood products,
Rules of PRC, of course, encourage accredited health association to conduct training on rational blood use and voluntary donations. They also provide continuing professional education units for such training. So the role of professional societies and association naman is to promote seminars and training on the rational blood use, dangers of commercial blood, benefits of voluntary donations, and to develop manual and modules through the NVBSP subcommittees. The role of the Department of Health naman is to ensure training for health personnel on the rational blood use, blood transfusion medicine, voluntary donation merits, required hospital conduct CPA, a program as licensure prerequisite, provide guidelines for residency exams and activities monitoring, required blood transfusion committees, and teaching hospitals and those with blood banks. The composition and functions of the hospital transfusion committee. So there's a lot of members now. We have the physicians from pediatrics, medicine, surgery, OB/GYN and pathology, the hematology consultant, and many more.
Hi everyone, in this video I will tackle to you about the Chapter 4 to Chapter 7 of Administrative Order number 9 series of 1995, Rules and Regulation, Implementation, Republic Act 7719. And first, I will tackle to you the Chapter 4. Chapter 4 is all about Blood Services Network and Blood Donor Recruitment, and it consists of two sections, the Section 12 and Section 13. So first, I will tackle to you about the Section 12. Section 12, Establishment of Blood Services Network. It established in coordination with the local ONCR or Organizational Network of Regional Centers, and it should be chaired by the Regional Health Director. For the following. First is review of the existing linkages among blood service facilities and requirements for blood within the respective region. Second, formulation of a design for a blood collection and distribution scheme for the region. Third, designation and authorization of different blood service facilities according to geographic location, to complementary tasks and other related undertakings. And lastly, review of the annual Consolidated Regional Blood Services Operational Plan recommended for funding to the National Program Committee. So in Section 12, it really ensures that the blood services are well organized, coordinated, and funded well at the regional level. Section 13. Section 13 is all about blood donor recruitment. So the department shall adopt a system of procedures or programs to promote blood donor recruitment to ensure the increase in the number and retention of voluntary blood donors. So there are four of the following that can ensure or help to increase the number of voluntary blood donors. So the first one is to coordinate with the heads of agencies, institutions, offices, organizations, business establishments, and committees, be they government or non-government. And they shall be encouraged to actively participate in donor recruitment in order to secure commitments to regular blood donations. And second is the celebration of Blood Donors Week. So annually, they celebrate Blood Donors Week on the second week of July in collaboration of the Philippine National Red Cross. And during this week, the department shall adopt a program or systems of awards, rights, ceremonies, or activities in special recognition of voluntary blood donors. So, in the third, professionalization of donors and recruiters. The department shall coordinate the professionalization of voluntary blood donors, health educators, and donor recruiters through organized training activities. And lastly, the department shall encourage and convince local government units to pass ordinances or resolution that will promote the walking blood donor concept. It includes the mandatory keeping of a list of qualified voluntary donors in government hospitals, rural health units, health centers, and barangays. It also covers the conduct of mass blood typing activities in areas where there are no adequate blood services facilities. So the goal of Section 13 is to ensure the voluntary blood donors through participation, recognition programs, trainings, and other activities with the help of the government. So we are now in Chapter 5. It's all about upgrading of services and facilities. In Chapter 5, there are 9 sections from Section 14 to Section 22. So first, we'll tackle about, or I will discuss first the Section 14. Monitoring and Evaluation Subcommittee. So the composition of Monitoring and Evaluation shall compose of Department of Health, Department of Education, Philippine National Red Cross, Philippine Blood Coordinating Council, other agencies, professional organizations, and societies. And this subcommittee also require a status reports when deemed appropriate from various agency units such as, but not limited to, the Hospital Operation and Management Service, the Bureau of Licensure and Regulation, and the Bureau of Research and Laboratories of the department. So second is the function of monitoring and evaluation. It shall design an upgrading and development plan to ensure at all times better quality blood services. And it should set a criteria of indicators to monitor the progress or success in meeting the requirements of upgrading of blood services facilities. And it should monitor all continuing professional education activities and should coordinate all studies and reviews related to the upgrading of blood service facilities and review the non-monetary incentives for voluntary blood donors and recommend changes when necessary. Section 15. Section 15 is all about the Department of Health, regional hospitals, and medical centers. So, all the regional hospitals and medical centers of the department shall upgraded to hospital-based Category B blood banks or centers. And it should be followed in accordance with the requirements of Section 28 and 29 of this implementing rules and regulation. In Section 13, Provincial and District Hospitals. The department shall assist in the upgrading of provincial and district hospitals to meet the blood transfusion services requirement in the area, especially by providing technical assistance, training, and mobilizing resources. So the department shall support the smaller hospitals in order for them to provide a safe and reliable blood transfusion services. Section 17. Blood banks or centers with special functions. Number 1. One blood bank or center shall be designated as the National Blood Center, and it should be developed to be able to perform more specialized functions such as, but not limited to, preparation of specialized plasma derivatives, performance of special confirmatory and reference blood tests, conduct a highly technical specialist on-the-job training courses, and conduct of research and special studies. Number 2, at least one blood bank or center in every geographical region shall be designated as the Regional Blood Center and shall be developed to perform special functions such as preparation and distribution of blood components for other hospitals within the region, training and supervisory functions over the other blood banks or centers within the region, and research. So the National Blood Center supports the advancement of the hospitals nationwide or national, from the word National Blood Center, while the Regional Blood Center, it supports the hospitals in its regions. Section 18. So by the way, the Section 18 and Section 19 are closely related to each other because it talks about licensing. But the difference is Section 18 is for the private hospitals, while the Section 19 is for the government hospitals. So in Section 18, the Department through Bureau of Licensure and Regulation shall require private hospitals to submit their voluntary blood donation program plan. Also in the government hospitals in Section 19. But there are application for renewal of their licenses in Section 19. So number 1 is preceding year's voluntary blood donation program report according to the format designed by the Monitoring and Evaluation Subcommittee. And number 2, Bureau of Licensure and Regulation monitoring visit report for the preceding year. Section 20. The Philippine National Red Cross. The department shall assist the PNRC in mobilizing resources and in upgrading their facilities or chapters by facilitating linkages with private or government hospitals with laboratory facilities and trained personnel. So in Section 20, the department shall assist the PNRC so they can improve their blood facilities or blood donation facilities through partnership and supports in their resources. Section 21. Preventive Services. All blood services facilities shall provide preventive health services such as education and pre- and post-donation counseling on blood transfusion, transmissible disease, in line with the guidelines and standards of the National Voluntary Blood Services Units. So in the blood services facilities is not only for blood donation or blood transfusion, but also for educating the donors and for disease prevention. In Section 22, Recognition Awards. The department, in coordination with the PNRC, shall grant seals of excellence in recognition of outstanding service of blood service facilities to be awarded in a formal ceremony as part of Blood Donors Week. So in this section, the department issue a award for those who are deserving to para makakuha ng Blood Donors Award. So we are now in Chapter 6, Phase Out of Commercial Blood Banks. In Section 23, Process of Phasing Out. The department shall effect the phasing out of all commercial blood banks over a period of 2 years, and it should be extendable for a maximum period of 2 years after the effectivity of RA 7719. The decision to extend shall be based on the result of a careful study and review of the blood supply and demand and public safety. In Section 24, Option for Commercial Blood Banks. The department shall encourage and assist existing commercial blood banks to convert to solely clinical laboratories in order to ensure job security of their personnel and allow a reasonable return on their investment on training and equipment. So in this section, the department encourage the commercial blood banks, or they give a option for commercial blood banks. Instead of closing completely, they can convert it into clinical laboratories so that the workers can keep their jobs and also the owners can't lose their investment. So now we are in Chapter 7, the non-profit operation. In Section 25, Operations and Maintenance of Blood Service Facilities. The operation and maintenance of all blood service facilities and other entities, agencies, establishments engaged in blood service shall be non-profit, and the service fees may be collected but not greater than the amount prescribed by the department, and the fees shall be limited to the necessary expenses for collection and processing of blood and reasonable fees for maintaining and upgrading facilities and services. and the blood shall be collected from healthy voluntary donors only, and not the paid donors. And the BRL director shall issue bureau orders on the schedule of the standard fees as stated in section 25. So the blood service must be a non-profit, safe, fairly priced, and donor-based to protect public health. Thank you.
Good day, everyone. Today, I will be discussing on Chapter 8 of Administrative Order Number 9, Series of 1995. This chapter covers the rules and regulations on blood service facilities, and it is composed of sections 26 up to 41. However, for my part, I will only be discussing sections 26 to 33, which talk about the regulatory authority, categories of blood services, requirements for licensing, renewal, inspection, and the transition and phase out of commercial blood banks. So, without further ado, let us begin with section 26. Section 26 titled Regulatory Authority. Authority: Department of Health or DOH through the Bureau of Research and Laboratories or BRL under the Office for Health Facilities Standards and Regulation. Role: Issue orders and circulars on licensing and technical requirements. So this section identifies the Department of Health through the Bureau of Research and Laboratories or BRL as the regulatory authority for blood services. This means the BRL is responsible for licensing and regulation, and they are also authorized to issue orders and circulars to implement technical requirements. In short, they are the main agency that ensures blood services operate safely and according to standards. Next section is the section 27, titled Categories of Blood Service Capabilities. First, we have the blood banks or centers. These can be hospital-based or non-hospital-based. They are further classified into Category A and Category B, depending on the service they can provide. Category A usually includes donor recruitment, blood collection, basic screening, and storage. Category B includes everything in Category A but with additional services like preparing all blood products and investigating transfusion reactions. Second, we have the blood collection units or BCUs. They mainly focus on donor recruitment, screening, education, and transporting collected blood to blood banks. And lastly, there are blood stations, which are smaller facilities, often in hospitals or Red Cross chapters. They mainly store and issue blood but are still regulated by BRL. So, overall, Section 27 makes it clear that not all blood services facilities provide the same level of service, but each one plays an important role in the system. Now, let's proceed to the Section 28. Section 28 is titled Requirements for New License. First, there are personal requirements. A blood bank must have a supervising physician with a proper training in blood banking, along with registered medical technologists who have the right training and experience. For higher categories, like Category B, a pathologist or hematologist is required to supervise. Second, they need a staff development plan, meaning they should have continuous training for their personnel. Third, there are requirements for physical facilities, equipment, and supplies. These must follow BRL standards and should always be properly maintained. Other requirements include biosafety protocols, strict quality control, proper documentation and reporting, a system for blood distribution and transport, and the presence of blood transfusion committee. Blood banks are also expected to provide preventive services like health education and counseling for donors, and they should also participate in networking with other facilities for better coordination. In summary, Section 28 ensures that any new blood bank or center is well equipped, well staffed, and safe before they can operate. Next is the Section 29, titled Requirements for Renewal of License. For a blood bank to renew, it must first show that all its technical staff passed the proficiency test given the previous year. It should also have achieved at least 70% of its staff development plan. Another requirement is that they must have collected blood only from voluntary donors, since the law discourages commercial or paid donations. The blood bank also needs to submit a complete annual report of its operations before January 21 of the following year. Lastly, renewal requires an inspection to confirm that the blood bank is still operating under physical and technical standards and that they are only collecting the allowable service fees. In short, Section 29 ensures that renewal is not automatic. The blood bank must prove it continues to meet the standards. Next is Section 30, titled Terms and Conditions. Licensing authority lies with the BRL, but outside Metro Manila, the Regional Health Director represents them. A license is valid for 1 year and it is non-transferable. It must always be displayed in a visible place within the facility. Licensing also involves both document evaluation and yearly inspection. Fees are also required. 600 pesos for a new licensed, 400 pesos for renewal, and 2,000 for proficiency testing. These fees apply equally to both government and private blood banks. So overall, this section reminds facilities that licensing is a privilege with strict conditions, not just a one-time requirement. Now, let's proceed to Section 30, or the licensing process. Step 1 is initial application. New applicants must submit Form Number 1 with all supporting documents such as SEC registration, staff credentials, equipment list, biosafety procedures, and blood transfusion committee details. Step 2 is renewal application. For renewals, applicants must submit Form Number 2 with updates on staff, facilities, annual reports, donor list, and other changes. This must be filed at least 2 months before the license expires. Step 3 is inspection. New blood banks are inspected before licensing, while existing ones are inspected yearly. Inspections can also be unannounced, and only BRL-trained inspectors are authorized. Step 4 is timetable for application and inspection. New licenses may be applied for any time, but renewals must follow the 2-month rule. Failing to apply on time means the blood bank is considered operating without a license. And step 5 is release of license. If all requirements are met, the license is released within 2 weeks. But if deficiencies are found, new applicants receive a deficiency letter, while renewal applicants may be ordered to cease operations until they comply. In this section, gives you a clear system for how blood banks are licensed and monitored. Let's proceed to Section 32, or the transition period for confirmation of license. During this time, existing blood banks were allowed to continue operating even if they did not yet meet all the new standards, as long as they submitted an upgrade plan. This plan showed how they would improve their facilities, staff, and service to comply with the law. But by January 1, 1997, the transition period ended. By that time, all blood banks were required to fully comply with the new rules. If they failed to meet the requirements, they were no longer allowed to operate. And this section basically gave blood banks time to adjust but made sure that in the end, everyone met the same safety and quality standards. And last but not the least, the Section 33 or the phase out of commercial blood banks. This section addresses the phase out of commercial blood banks. The Department of Health decided that no new license would be issued to commercial blood banks. Existing commercial blood banks could still renew their license, but only if they complied with the new requirements during the transition period. The ultimate goal was to gradually eliminate commercial or for-profit blood banking and replace it with a system that relies on voluntary, non-profit blood donation. This change was important because it made blood donation safer, more ethical, and focused on saving lives rather than making profit. It also helped strengthen the culture of voluntary donation in the Philippines. So, the following sections will be discussed by my other group mates. That will be all. Thank you.
So now, let's proceed on Section 34, Appeals and Reports on Violations. This section is about what should happen when there are violations of RA 7719 and its rules. It states that any reports of violations need to be directed to the Secretary of Health and also to the National Director of the Bureau of Research and Laboratories. This means that these two offices are responsible for receiving and handling such reports. It also explains that the National Director of the BRL has the authority to request police assistance if needed. The help can come from either the National Bureau of Investigation or Philippine National Police. Next is Section 35, Allowable Service Fee. In number 1, maximum fee limits, blood banks can charge a service fee for blood, but it can't exceed the Department of Health limit. The Bureau of Research and Laboratories sets these fees, which can be adjusted over time to reflect changes in requirements and covered tests. Number 2, screening test determination. The Bureau of Research and Laboratories determines necessary donor and blood screening tests. They rely on analyzing research information, including disease prevalence and risk estimates, and consult with technical experts to weigh benefit against cost. The third one is fee cost calculation. The maximum fee is calculated by the BRL based on the direct and indirect costs of running a blood bank. Direct costs include collection and processing. Indirect costs cover maintenance and upgrades. Cross-matching and special compatibility tests are excluded. The fourth one is unit cost estimation. This paragraph emphasizes that both the direct and indirect costs must be carefully estimated for every single unit of blood that is collected, processed, and ultimately distributed. This ensures that the fee accurately reflects the actual costs involved providing each unit of blood. Now let's proceed on Section 36, Authorization on Blood Collection Unit. The regional health directors, including the regional health director of the National Capital Region, shall authorize blood collection units according to the following standards and procedure. A BCU needs to have at least one physician and one medical technologist who are registered with the PRC or the Professional Regulation Commission. They both need to have valid licenses. Both the doctor and the medical technologist need to have 1 month training in things like getting people to donate blood, motivating donors, teaching people about health, counseling before blood collection, handling and transporting blood, managing problems with blood collection. This training needs to be done by an agency that the BRL or the Bureau of Research and Laboratories recognizes. A BCU needs to have the right equipment and supplies, and they need to be in good quality. This is for things like finding donors, screening donors, educating donors, counseling donors, collecting blood, handling blood, transporting blood, and managing reactions from donors. You can find more information in the SOP or the Standard Operating Procedure Manual on blood service in Section 38.
The third one is a BCU may be static or mobile. Physical arrangement for both kinds during collection shall be comfortable, clean, and adequate. So, a BCU needs to be connected to a network with a blood bank or center. The blood bank or the center needs confirm that they have a coordination and cooperation agreement with the BCU. This confirmation can be in a certificate. The BCU shall submit its schedule of bleeding and target area of donor recruitment that clearly follows geographical area agreements with other BCUs within the catchment of the relevant blood bank or center. The BCU needs to submit its schedule for bleeding or the blood collection and the areas where they plan to recruit donors. This schedule needs to match any agreements with other BCUs in the same area managed by the blood bank or the center. BCU shall express agreement to submit the blood bags collected and the list of donors to its attached blood bank or the center at the end of collection day. Authorization can be withdrawn if the BCU fails to execute this agreement. The BCU has to agree to submit the collected blood bags and a list of donors to the blood bank or the center at the end of the collection day. If the BCU doesn't do this, they can lose their authorization to operate. Next is, each BCU shall be visited at least once a year by the head of the blood bank or the center it coordinates with or by a duly designated blood bank center's health staff. Each BCU needs to be visited at least once a year by the head of the blood bank or the center they work with, or by someone from the blood bank center staff. Authorization as a BCU shall be renewed yearly, signed by the regional health director and issued to the head of the BCU. The BCU's authorization needs to be renewed every year. The regional health director has to sign it, and it's given to the head of the BCU. The authority to operate the BCU shall be revoked by the regional health director should the procedures and services be found to be below the standards set by the BRL in its Standard Operating Procedure Manual on Blood Services in Section 38. The regional health director can take away the BCU's permission to operate if their procedures and services don't meet the standards set by the BRL in their Standard Operating Procedure Manual on Blood Services on Section 38. Next is Section 37, Authorization of Blood Stations. The Regional Health Director, including the Regional Health Director of the National Capital Region, shall authorize blood stations according to the following standards and procedures. First, blood station may be located only within hospital premises, government or private, or within the premises of the Philippine National Red Cross chapters. Second, a blood station shall be under the responsibility of a PRC-registered medical technologist with valid certificate of registration and valid professional license. A blood station shall have at least one properly functioning blood refrigerator with 24 hours power supply. There shall be written and readily available contingency plan for all blood stations in case of problems such as instrument or equipment breakdown. All blood stations shall have a regular schedule and a written record of maintenance and service of all equipment and instruments used in blood bank services. Blood shall be issued only to patients confined within the hospital that houses the station or to hospitals within the area, unless called for by emergency conditions as listed in Section 28. So, blood can only be given to patients who are staying in the hospital where the blood station is located or to hospitals within in the same area, unless it's an emergency as described in Section 28. Next is, the authority to operate a blood station shall be renewed yearly. The operation of a blood station is strictly regulated to ensure safety and quality in blood services. The authority to operate must be renewed annually. With approval from the Regional Health Director, a copy of this authorization is furnished to the hospital's chief and must indicate the designated medical technologies in charge. Blood stations are subject to at least one annual inspection conducted by the head of the blood bank or center health staff. Records of these visits should always be available for review by the Blood Regulation Laboratory or its authorized representatives. The authority to operate a blood station may be revoked if the storage, handling, issuance, distribution, or disposal of blood is found to be below the standards outlined in the Standards Procedures Manual on Blood Services in Section 38. Next is Section 38, Standard Operating Manual. Section 38 talks about the Standard Operating Manual or SOP Manual for blood services. This manual serves as the official guide for everything related to blood handling, from donor recruitment to laboratory testing, blood processing, distribution, and even biosafety and disposal of blood. It ensures that all procedures follow international guidelines like those set by the World Health Organization and the International Society of Blood Transfusion. The manual is carefully developed, pre-tested, and then officially signed by the Director of the Blood Regulation Laboratory. Once completed, it becomes part of the rules and regulations that blood stations must follow. Now, until the updated SOP manual is available, the system still relies on older orders, circulars, and memorandums that are not in conflict with the current regulations. This makes sure that there is no gap in blood safety standards. Another important point is that the SOP manual is not a one-time document. It is reviewed and revised periodically. Old versions are collected back by BRL and then updates are explained to key people so that everyone is aware of the changes and their effectivity. Next is Section 39, Quality Assurance Officer. This officer is someone recognized for integrity and organizational skills and is assigned or trained by the Blood Regulation Laboratory. The Quality Assurance Officer has several important responsibilities. First is, they organize quality assurance documents to keep records clear and updated. Coordinate with the head of the blood service facility to make sure proper standards are in place. Ensure recognized standards are followed, like proper testing, storage, and safety measures. Review quality control procedures regularly to check if everything is being done correctly. Monitor compliance with rules and regulations. Investigate problems and help with solutions when issues arise. In short, the quality assurance officer acts like the guardian of safety and quality in blood facilities. Make sure everything is done according to standards and that problems are solved quickly. Next is Section 40, Confirmation of Voluntary Donors. People who are paid to donate blood, usually brought in by relatives of patients, should be carefully identified and put on a blacklist. Blacklist is like a list of people who are not allowed to donate blood anymore. It's used to keep track of individuals who might not be suitable or safe blood donors according to the rules and standards. This is done by checking their history and giving them a physical exam. Also, people with a lot of needle marks on their arms or who don't give their full name and how they're related to the patient should be rejected right away. The quality assurance officer needs to double-check donors who donate regularly to the blood bank or the center as part of their regular monitoring of the blood bank or center operations. Next is the last section of Chapter 8, which is Section 41, Emergency Blood Transfusion. Blood collection and immediate transfusion in hospitals without a license as a blood bank or center may be allowed in an emergency situation subject to the following situation. First is the patient's medical or surgical condition has to be a life-threatening emergency. Second, the blood collection and transfusion have to be done under the direct supervision and responsibility of the physician who's taking care of the patient. Third is they have to follow all the usual standards for screening donors, including checking their history and giving them a physical exam. They also have to follow the rules about cleanliness or asepsis and safety or biosafety and use the right equipment and supplies. Last is they have to do the required tests for things like hemoglobin, syphilis, HIV, hepatitis, and malaria, and also do a compatibility testing including cross-matching before giving the transfusion.
Good day, everyone. So today I will be the one who discuss the Chapter 9 and Chapter 10 of Implementing Rules and Regulation of RA 7719, also known as the National Blood Services Act of 1994. Chapter 9 focus on the importation of blood bank equipment and services, while the Chapter 10 talks about the penalties for violation of the law. So let's start with Chapter 9. Sa Chapter 9, there is 5 section na nabilong. The Section 42, 43, 44, 45, and the Section 46. The Section 42, it is a certification of important privileges. It is an annual list of blood bank centers and hospitals that actively participating or joining in the program, which is the voluntary blood services. And this list is prepared by the National Voluntary Blood Services Unit and gina-approve and certified by the Undersecretary of Health for Health Facility Standards and Regulation. And ginanoted siya sa two directors, the Director of Bureau of Research and Laboratories and the Bureau of Licensing and Regulation. After ma-approve ang list, it is submitted to the Department of Finance and the Bureau of Customs. The deadline of this list is before January 31 of every year. So the Section 42 is the one who ensure that all active blood bank centers and hospital is officially listed, certified, and report yearly to the government to monitor and privileges. The next section is the Section 43, Equipment and Material Covered. The Bureau of Research and Laboratories, together with Department of Finance and Bureau of Customs, will make an official list of blood bank items, just like equipment, blood banks, and reagent. And this official list item can be imported without paying a tax as long as under siya sa official list ng Bureau of Research and Laboratories. And the Bureau of Research and Laboratories can be update and change this list whenever it is unnecessary. Next, Section 44, Application for Tax Exemption. This section explains the step-by-step process if the blood banks or hospital wants to import materials or equipment without paying a tax. So there are two-step process. Step 1, letter of intent. Step 2, filing an application. And step 1, letter of intent, which is a blood bank center or hospital must be submitted a letter for Secretary of Health. And this letter include a list of equipment and materials with their specification and reason why they are needed. Then the Bureau of Research and Laboratories Director will check and certifies if the items is allowed. Then after that, the Secretary of Health or authorized representative will sign a recommendation for exemption or tax-free. The second step is filing the application. The institution then files the application for tax and duty exemption with the Revenue Office, Department of Finance in Manila. Blood banks, hospital, and institution that actively participating in the National Voluntary Blood Services Program, such as PNRC. They are the one that can be benefit from this exemption as long as they are certified and endorsed by the Secretary of Health or his authorized representative.
So another section is the section 45, the other documentation requirements. For expeditious processing, the application shall also include a certification from the Department of Trade and Industry or DTI that the proposed importation are not locally available in sufficient quality, comparable quality, and reasonable price. So the section 45 means that uh, it requires proof from the DTI that the equipment or materials being imported cannot be brought in the Philippines or not available. The last section na under sa Chapter 9 is the Section 46, which is inspection. The Department of Finance are the one who conduct inspection before and after the release of imported materials or equipment that granted tax-free or duty-free. This inspection is cover both facilities and the imported materials or equipment. After the inspection or the result of the inspection must be submitted to the DOH or Department of Health because they are the one who responsible for monitoring and punishment. Now, we will going to move into a chapter 10, the penalties for violation. Sa chapter 10, there are only 4 section na kabilang, the section 47, 48, section 49, and the last section which is the section 50. Section 47, penalties. There are 5 penalties under the section 47. First is overcharging. If a blood bank or center charges more than the maximum fee set by the Department of Health, its license may be suspended or revoked by Secretary of Health. They may face penalty of imprisonment of 1 to 6 months or a fine of 5,000 to 50,000 or both at the discretion of the competent court. The second penalty is the operating without license. If anyone who establishes or operates a blood bank or center without a license from DOH or fail to follow the required standard, they may face 12 to 20 years of imprisonment and fine of 50,000 to 500,000 or both. The third penalties is the contaminated blood handling. If the head of blood bank center or the necessary trained personnel under the head's direct supervision is found irresponsible for dispensing, transfusing, and failing to dispose the blood within 48 hours, which have proven that this blood is contaminated of transfusion and transmissible disease, they may face imprisonment for 10 years. This is without prejudice to failing of criminal charges under the revised penal code. The fourth penalties is misuse of duty-free imports. Any tax and duty-free imported equipment and materials cannot be transferred or sold without prior approval for the Department of Finance. Violators will face penalties under existing tax and revenue laws. The fifth and last penalties is the administrative sanction by DOH. The Secretary of his duly authorized representative after due notice and hearing by also impose the following administration sanction. There are 3. First, 5,000 pesos fine for blood bank center heads or owner who fail to apply a renewal license for at least 2 months before expiration. The second is 3,000 pesos fine for blood collection units or station operating without authorization. And the third is the blood bank center license or blood collection unit or blood station authorization may suspend their license if they do these 4 violation. First, misrepresentation of facts or falsification of document or record, refusal of entry for inspection, refusal to make available its book accounts and record the operation, and failure to inform the people or its authorized representative about changes in blood bank center collection or blood station location, facilities, services, and operation. noted that the Secretary may also recommend to the Professional Regulation Commission or PRC to suspend or revoke the professional license of any health worker who falsifies documents, records, lab result, or violates under RA 7719. Section 48. Repelling clause. These rules and regulations shall supersede all provisional administrative and bureau orders and circular of department, the provision of any department or BRL, order and circular or other instruments inconsistent with these rules and regulations are hereby repealed or modified. It means that any old rules, orders, or issuance from the BRL that conflict to a new rules, it may consider repealed or modified. Section 49. Effectively clause. These rules and regulations will take effect 15 days after being published in the official gazette or into two national newspapers that are widely circulated. In short, the Section 49 state that when the rules is officially become valid and enforceable, it takes 15 days after proper publication. And the last section is the Section 50, which is approval. These rules and regulations were officially approved on April 28, 1995.